Thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. My name is Hank Idsinga, and I'm the inspector in charge of the Toronto Police Service's Homicide and Missing Persons Unit. I am joined here today by Renee Foley, who is the Detective Sergeant in charge of 53 Division Criminal Investigations Bureau, and Detective Alexander Wallace, who is the primary investigator from 53 Division, who's been working on this case. On Monday, May 2nd, 2022, Toronto Police responded when the remains of a young girl were found in a dumpster on Dale Avenue. She was unidentified, and after a post-mortem examination conducted by Ontario Forensic Pathology Services, her cause of death was undetermined. Investigators from both 53 Division and the Homicide and Missing Persons Unit have been working tirelessly for over a year to identify the little girl. Outstanding missing persons occurrences were reviewed, dozens of tips were investigated, and the process of identification through DNA and genetic genealogy was commenced. The response from the community was tremendous. Thanks to a tip from the community and some great work by investigators and the Centre of Forensic Sciences, I can now identify this little girl as Neveah Tucker of Toronto, N-E-V-E-A-H. Neveah was born on May 18th, 2017. As previously stated, we believe that Neveah died in 2021. She would have been just shy of her 5th birthday when her body was placed in the dumpster. We have a lot of work to do. We will continue to work closely with our partners to investigate the circumstances leading up to Neveah's death and the subsequent disposal of her body. At this time, no arrests have been made and no charges have been laid. While we are extremely limited in what we can say, I will attempt to answer any questions you might have at this time.
To her parents, are they considered suspects in this?
We notified her mother just today, and I won't comment on the status of her mother in our investigation.
Can you just comment on the investigative process? You mentioned that police did look at genetic genealogy, as well as you said you received a tip. Can you just comment on how those things played into the identification?
Yeah, and it's, you know, a lot has come to light in the last few days in regards to all of that. So we're making very good progress with the genetic genealogy, and I've said before, it's a very time-consuming process. It can take years, but I was always confident that it would get us answers. And the intersection of the genetic genealogy and the investigative work that sprung from the tip were on a bit of a collision course. And they've lined up quite nicely with each other, so a lot of work was put into both avenues and came together today to where we are now.
Are you prepared to say that this was a homicide, or is that still undetermined?
Well, the pathologist wasn't able to identify a cause of death, so we're not saying it's a homicide. We'll see where the investigation takes us. We're certainly open. We're still open.
Case of neglect or something else. You said quite poignantly when this case first came to our attention, I guess to your attention, that kids don't just die, and right. I imagine that's front of mind for investigators.
Absolutely, and it's definitely in our minds that this could still potentially become a homicide case.
Has she been reported missing before?
No.
Questions. I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on this community tip that you received that helped you to identify the person. If you could elaborate. Who provided that tip, the information that they gave? Well, I'm not going to identify who provided the tip, but the tip itself wasn't specific. Let me say that. It pointed us in a direction, and a lot of work had to be done on that information. Absolutely, and it's definitely in our minds that this could still potentially become a homicide case.
Who provided the tip, but the tip itself wasn't specific. Let me say that. It pointed us in a direction, and a lot of work had to be done on that information. It actually did identify somebody else as being the potential victim. But the windfall from that tip ended up taking us in the right direction. So it was a lot of work, and we're very grateful to the person who did call in and provide us with that information. It gave us that little jigsaw puzzle piece, and we were able to build from there.
Thank you. And has there been any related activity or evidence related to dead children in Rosedale in the last year since this investigation started? Is this an isolated incident, or is there any related evidence or activity in Rosedale to make you think that?
No. And we don't believe there's any link whatsoever to that specific neighborhood, except for the fact that that's where Neveah's remains ended up.
What happens to the little girl, Inspector, while your team still does their work? I know that your team attended as well, like a memorial for the little girl, and I think people might wonder, like, what happens to her? Like, does her body get claimed? Do police take charge of that? Would there be a burial for her?
Well, we have to, as part of our investigation, interview family, different family members, and see if there is a claim to the remains. Whether any social agencies will step up, and we'll determine what happens with those remains down the road. So hopefully we get some answers over the next few weeks to see where that goes.
Are you confident you will be able to determine a cause of death? And it's been
A cause of death? I mean, that's up to the forensic pathologists, right? And it's been a year, and it's been undetermined up until this point whether some witness information or some forensic examinations of scenes that we uncover will help us out in that. We're optimistic. I don't know that we'll ever get there, though.
Can you talk about the timeline of when that tip came in and the investigative steps that got you to ultimately making that identification?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a while. Like I said, the tip kind of took us in another direction, and I'm sorry I can't get too specific about that, but there's certainly some good work by investigators over the last few months to really look at the different aspects of that tip and expand on it and ultimately bring us to where we are today.
So, was she born in Toronto?
We believe so.
Is her mom in Toronto?
Yes.
Father?
Sorry?
Father?
Father, we don't know yet.
Anyone else?
No? Okay, thank you very much for being here.